Ohio State, they got to it this weekend. The Buckeyes have been on a run, 4 commits in 3 days. And in this video, we're going to find out how Ohio State was able to put it all together and make such a big splash over the weekend. And more importantly, are they done? I got Matt Parker from Letterman Row on this one to break it all down. But first, Ohio State fans, these are exciting times. Make sure you are subscribed to the On3 Recruits channel. We got more Buckeye coverage and news to come. But first, let's bring on Matt Parker from Letterman Row. And Matt, it was a big weekend. We got TJ Alford committed, London Merritt committed, Desi Jones committed, and lastly, Deshaun Stewart committed. What went right for OSU to kind of line it up like this and land so many recruits over this specific weekend?
I think it's a little bit of a two-pronged answer here, Josh. You look at London Merritt and TJ Alford. Those are two guys that Ohio State has been recruiting for quite a while now. I mean, TJ Alford, you and I have talked about him at length, the relationship with James Laurinaitis. We previewed his recruitment. I said I felt it was going to be Ohio State, and sure enough, it was. London Merritt, the timing of it was a bit interesting for me. I had felt like the Buckeyes were in pole position for that one for a while now, especially with the coaching changes at Alabama once Nick Saban retired. I think you saw Alabama, who was right up there with Ohio State, right before Saban retired, kind of took a backseat here, and then Ohio State just took advantage of that opportunity, as every other program has tried to do in the college football landscape here. The relationship with London Merritt and Larry Johnson, Ohio State's defensive line coach. I mean, Ohio State has been recruiting London Merritt for going on 3 years at this point. So the longevity, the understanding, at least for London Merritt, that for now, Larry Johnson isn't going anywhere. And he said that at a press conference this past week at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center here in Columbus. So just those two right there is just an example of longevity, faith in relationships right there, or having faith in those relationships, I should say. And then you go out to New Jersey, teammates Desi Jones and Deshaun Stewart, who were both on campus within the last week. Stewart was on campus 2 weeks ago. Desi Jones actually was on campus this past weekend. He was supposed to visit the same weekend that Stewart did, but some traveling snafus out of the Garden State. He wasn't able to make it to campus. But we'll start with Stewart, the most recent commit in the last 3 days. Starting with Stewart, new safeties coach Matt Guerrieri has, in a short amount of time, Josh, put a lot of stock in the guys that he is recruiting. One of those guys being Deshaun Stewart. The Buckeyes went out to New Jersey, DePaul Catholic, and it was a contingent of Ryan Day and Tim Walton and Brian Hartline, who was also out there, and we'll get to that in just a second. That trio of Ohio State coaches were out there at DePaul Catholic in January during the winter contact period, extended an offer to Stewart, and then locked in an unofficial visit for March. Sure enough, he shows up, raves about the visit with Letterman Row's Alex Gleitman about Ohio State being able to be around Ryan Day and Matt Guerrieri. And sometimes kids just know, that's very rare. Is that how it happens anymore? But sometimes kids just know. Deshaun Stewart wasted no time pulling the trigger on Ohio State. And then looking at Desi Jones, that's where Brian Hartline comes in, making that same visit with Day and Walton in January. Although it should be noted that Desi Jones has had an Ohio State offer for a little bit now. He got offered in September of 2023, and Ohio State has been, that's a guy that's been on their board. And I think we saw the Javen Boggs decommitment last week. That opens up a spot. We talked about how Ohio State is trending for all of these big-time national guys. And, you look at the recruiting rankings and where Desi Jones is at, and maybe, he's not the highest-ranked guy for, across all industry platforms. But it's pretty simple to me, Josh. If Brian Hartline thinks he's good enough to play wide receiver at Ohio State, he's pretty good, right? That's pretty simple for me. I've adopted that policy. And as much, again, as I love Charles Power and Cody Belair, I'm going to go with what Brian Hartline thinks about a wide receiver.
Yeah, trust in Hartline. That's all you got to do. Ohio State entered the weekend number 1 in the On3 industry rankings. They exit the weekend number 1 in the On3 industry rankings, and they had some other big names on campus that I want to talk about. 2 I really want to hit on are number 1 offensive tackle David Sanders and the number 4 ranked wide receiver in America, Jamie French. What are your sources saying on how Ohio State did this weekend with these two top targets?
Well, let's start off with David Sanders, who is an absolute top priority target for Ohio State, regardless of position, regardless of side of the ball. It doesn't matter. David Sanders has to be the number one guy that Ohio State is chasing in this 2025 cycle. And, just talking with some folks after his visit, he left Columbus Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, something like that. Ohio State needs to be taken seriously in this race, Josh. We've talked about this a little bit here, but Alabama and Clemson and Tennessee and Georgia, those are all schools that are in the mix here. And, David Sanders has been loving those schools, but now he's loving on the Buckeyes. Right. It's really time to start taking Ohio State seriously. He got to spend a lot of time with offensive line coach Justin Fry, head coach Ryan Day, offensive line GA Mike Soleni, but also he spent a lot of time Saturday during practice with Ohio State offensive tackle commit Carter Lowe, and then five-star quarterback commit Tavian St. Clair. Those two were following David Sanders around the Woody Hayes Athletic Center like nobody's business, just in his ear all the time, pointing things out, pointing out other recruits that were on campus. Ohio State had a bunch of alums on campus, including Luke Whippler, who's now playing center for the Cleveland Browns. So I believe Paris Johnson's mom was at Ohio State this past weekend. So I wouldn't be shocked if she didn't say anything to David Sanders or to his family. So there was a big, big effort by Ohio State to put themselves on notice for David Sanders and show Sanders and his family that playing football and getting an education at Ohio State is a real thing, and it should be taken seriously. And now it is. So that recruitment is heating up. The Buckeyes are making things interesting in that race.
Now, Jamie French was another one. I saw he got to spend a lot of time with Coach Day. I mean, we already know he's got a great relationship with Brian Hartline. This was far from his first trip to Columbus, unlike David Sanders, who they were kind of rolling out the red carpet for the first time. So what were they trying to accomplish with Jamie French over the weekend?
I think to just really solidify that, you've gone through this process to its entirety once when he committed to Alabama in July of 2023. Mm-hmm. But now that commitment is obviously not there anymore. He decommitted, has reopened up his recruitment. And Ohio State, this kind of reminds me a little bit of Brandon Ennis and how he had committed to Oklahoma initially when Lincoln Riley was still there. And now, he took a step back, reopened things up, and now he's expected to have a very big year for Ohio State in his second season with the program. That's kind of the same track that this recruitment is moving for Ohio State, where, a guy that was a priority target, went somewhere else. And now Ohio State, affectionately known as, wide receiver U by some, they made a strong pitch this weekend. And I don't know if you saw any of the photos on social media, but let me just name off a couple of Ohio State alums that were on campus this weekend. You had Chris Olave, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Marvin Harrison Jr., Cam Babb, a very important program guy for Ohio State. Xavier Johnson was there. And then, of course, you have the entire current Ohio State wide receiver room. And, Jamie French saw Jeremiah Smith do Jeremiah Smith things in an Ohio State jersey. There's very real tracking for Jeremiah Smith to have a serious role for Ohio State as a true freshman. And that's one of the things that Jamie French has been watching in regards to Ohio State is what is Jeremiah Smith's development and his role as a true freshman is going to look like. Now, obviously, those two wide receivers are not the same because very respectfully, no wide receiver is Jeremiah Smith, quite honestly. But that stuff matters. And it was just being on campus, seeing how a practice works, seeing how coaches interact, just more of the same for Jamie French and for Ohio State to show that consistency. And that went a long way this weekend, Josh. Now, I think Ohio State is going to have to survive another round of visits. I think there's going to be some, maybe more unofficial visits, even a few official visits. But I've had a prediction in the On3 recruiting prediction machine for Ohio State to land Jamie French for about a month now. And I still think the Buckeyes are going to get it done.
Okay. Yeah. There's going to be many more visits to come for Jamie French, but I do think it was important for him to be in Columbus this past weekend. Now, we teased at the top, are they done? So I wanted to ask you, who do you think, and don't hold out on us now, who do you think could be the next to commit to Ohio State?
So I'm going to go it's a two-pronged approach. We talked about this a little bit before we started recording here, but I'm going to go a two-pronged approach. And my first choice here is I think Ohio State is in a really good position to flip a bit of an under-the-radar guy. The three-star safety out of Cleveland, Ohio, plays at St. Ignatius High School. His name's Cody Haddad, currently committed to Wisconsin, and Luke Fickell has been on campus 3 times now. Since January. He visited just a few days after he committed to Wisconsin, and now he was on campus 2 weeks ago, made 2 unofficial visits to Ohio State. I just think Ohio State is doing a lot of really good things there to keep the in-state guy at home. But if it's not going to be Cody Haddad, I just have this feeling, Josh, that finally Ohio State is going to be able to get 4-star safety Fahim Delane out of Good Counsel out there in Maryland. I just feel like that's going to happen soon. It just feels like it's about to happen. He was at LSU a week ago. He's been to Oregon. He's been to Texas. But Ohio State has always remained, in my opinion and in my reporting, Ohio State has always been in the driver's seat for Delane. He's been the top priority safety in the 2025 cycle since about 2022, which is insane. Even with a position coach change with Perry Eliano leaving and Matt Guerreri coming in, Ohio State has never stopped recruiting him as hard as it possibly can. And in between that gap of safety coaches, Ryan Day was really instrumental in that. Jim Knowles, defensive coordinator, was really instrumental in that. It was Student Appreciation Day at Ohio State, and there were some signs that the students made for Fahim Delane to come to Ohio State. That's pretty impressive. That's I'm not going to play a super major factor in it, but kids love that kind of attention. I mean, there's no denying that. And I just think Ohio State is going to get that done sooner rather than later.
All right. Well, like I said, after 4 commitments in 3 days, there could be more to come. Matt Parker, you guys do a phenomenal job of covering all things recruiting and Ohio State football over on Letterman Row. Going to be a busy couple weeks over there. Appreciate you stopping by the Inside Scoop after a massive recruiting weekend.
Thanks for having me, Josh. Appreciate it as always.
Thank you for watching this video. And if you enjoyed that, go check out the hundreds of videos that we have on this channel. And also, do me a favor, hit subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel.